It's a hard time to be a Boots Ennis fan. Jaron Ennis is a very talented fighter. I think he's one of the top 5 talents in the sport of boxing right now, but he hasn't, shown action in terms of moving on to fight, bigger names, challenging himself with opposition. Yeah, he beat Stanionis, but that fight was long overdue. And ultimately, we want to see Jaron Ennis fight the best out there. The Teofimo Lopez fight fell through, the Brian Norman fight fell through, and some of this isn't his fault. But now he's fighting Devin Haney, and don't get me wrong, I'm talking about Brian Norman's fighting Devin Haney, because ultimately the Brian Norman and Boots fight, that didn't come to fruition. So now Boots is in a place where he's like, all right, I'm ready to move up to 154, and he announced it when Brian Norman was getting ready to fight Jin Sasaki. During that fight week, when people were about to speculate, oh, Brian Norman and Boots should fight again at welterweight, that's exactly when Boots chose to say, hey, I'm moving up to 154, so I can't fight Brian Norman anymore. That's basically what he said, and that looked weak. That looks weak because ultimately, why would you say it the week of the Brian Norman fight? And maybe he was anticipating that people were going to speculate about, bringing Boots up in the conversation again with Brian Norman to make a big fight. And Brian Norman seems like he wants that fight. He called Boots out. So you just have a lot of stories of Boots, maybe not wanting to take these fights. I'm not going to say that Boots is a duck, that he's ducking these opponents, but he's definitely moving in such a way where he's not taking the best fights out there for him when it comes to big names. When you want to make a statement at this point in his career where he's not really considered a prospect anymore, I mean, this guy's a world champion, but ultimately you're moving up to 54. There are rumors that he doesn't want to fight Virgil Ortiz until he at least has 2 fights at 154. So it's like, dude, how many terms are you going to put on your greatness? Like, how many warm-up fights do you need before you fight credible opposition? Not that Stanionis is incredible, not that Villa is incredible, but you got to fight guys that are going to put you, really put you on the map. All the real boxing fans, we know who Boots Ennis is, but you got to take these big fights so that you continue to grow and your stock continues to shoot up. You got to take a Brian Norman fight. As soon as Brian Norman comes up to 54, you got to make that fight happen if you're Boots Ennis. As soon as you're ready for Virgil Ortiz, you got to make that fight happen. We're waiting for this guy because it's frustrating when you know how talented he is. We all know how good Boots is. Like, he's ridiculously good. He styles on his opponents. He's comfortable in both orthodox and the southpaw position. It doesn't get better than that. That sounds like Terrence Crawford to me, but a younger version. So to hear that he's not, and to see that he's not eager to fight certain guys like obviously Brian Norman or Virgil Ortiz, those are the biggest fights that you could possibly get. You can't get the Terrence Crawford fight right now. You can't get the Errol Spence Jr. fight right now. Go get these guys, But the thing is, it's easier said than done. It's easy for me to say, oh, Boots should fight Virgil, Boots should fight Brian Norman, but these are very dangerous fights for him. But you look at a guy like Devin Haney. Devin's taking a Brian Norman fight when he's never even fought at 147, and then you have Boots kind of look like he's ducking Brian Norman, and moving up to 54. I'm not saying that Boots isn't, telling the truth about not being able to make 47 anymore and that he outgrew the division. But damn, dude, like Devin Haney just took your spotlight, and this dude's he's a small, guy from 140 that just came up and not even fought at 147 yet, and he just took your big fight. He took your moment when Brian Norman's on the incline, has all the momentum after that Jin Sasaki knockout, and then ultimately Devin Haney steals that money fight from Boots Ennis because Boots didn't want to take it. He said, whatever, I'm moving up to 54, and ultimately, like, that was your moment. That was your big money fight. That was your big, showdown fight where we were really going to see who's the king of 147 at the moment. And it's unfortunate, but hopefully Boots makes some big fights happen because at this point, you need to fight everybody that's out there. You don't really have a legend that you can fight at 54 unless Crawford fights you, but it's unlikely because I think Crawford's going to retire after fighting Canelo, win, lose, or draw. And ultimately, Boots, with that being taken into account, you got to fight whoever's out there. If it's Virgil Ortiz, go get Virgil. If it's Teofimo Lopez, go get Teofimo Lopez. If it's Brian Norman, get Brian Norman. You got to make big fights happen if you're Boots Ennis because you're running out of time. The clock's ticking and everybody's waiting for your next move. If you don't, prove yourself now, I mean, the landscape of boxing is wide open, for other superstars to take your spot. I mean, Brian Norman, he's looking really good right now. Everybody is talking about him. He's getting a lot of buzz. So for Boots, we know he has the talent. We know you're great, but you got to start fighting the best. Start fighting big names so that you can really move the needle in your career because We all know you're good, but we just need you on the stages to show it. So we'll see what happens. Boots Ennis, let me know down below what you guys think. But thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys on the next Navs boxing video. Peace.